Hey, stop scrolling because we finna have a whole conversation about who you are and why you are the way that you are. All right, y'all. Let's talk about how my book "I Am the Answer" came into being, right? And so I live my life off of experience and then revelation. God, show me what it is you're trying to show me through the situation, right? So I had this teacher that kept calling me, every so often to say that my son was doing stuff wrong, and I'm like, so I'm at home trying to deal with the situation, and I'm like, look, I'm gonna wring your neck if you keep going up here showing out. So this particular day, I'm out and I'm walking through the park exercising, and I get this call from the teacher that says, "My child cuss." Excuse me? Who child cuss? Mine? I said, "Baby, I'm on my way." So I leave the park and I drive up to the school. I still got my workout stuff on. They give me a name tag, put the name tag on, and I walk down the hallway, and I step into the door, but the door's closed, and I'm looking through the window because I want to get a good idea of what's going on. Child, what I saw blew my mind. I'm looking in this glass, and I got kids jumping off of tables, rolling around on the ground. I mean, standing up dancing, and this one little kid was kicking a trash can from the back of the room to the front. Okay, and my son, who knew, because if I had caught him, I would wring his neck, was sitting at his desk like this. And so I'm looking, and the teacher is just running like this. And it blew my mind, so I just opened the door, I step in, and I grab her. Take a breath, don't even move. I said, don't panic. I'm Malachi's mother. Just take a breath. I said, because I am like in shock at what I'm looking at. Kids standing on tables, standing in chairs. Hey, hey. I said, what the heck is... And so I looked at her and said, how long has this been going on? And she said, for 4 months. 4 months? She said, I have not been able to teach them in 4 months. I said, well, why didn't you ask for help? She said, I did ask for help. So that immediately I'm like, oh, this is a problem. This is a serious problem. So, yes, the mama and me stood up, and I was like, everybody find a seat and get your butt in it. Don't you, sit down and sit down now. So you see kids scattering, right? And so there was one little girl that was still standing up in the chair, and I said, let me tell you something. Didn't I just say sit down? You better sit your butt in that seat, and you better not get back up. You understand what I just said? And she plopped down in that seat and looking. I don't care you looking at me like that. I said, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all? I said, for real? I know y'all lying. I said, let me tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to go down here to this office, but I better not come back down here, and y'all acting crazy for this woman. Y'all hear me? So I walked out, but I was on a mission. Long story short, I go down there to the principal, and I'm like, first of all, I need you to tell me how in the world they sitting up in the classroom like this, right? And, I'm like, ain't no control, all this stuff that's going on, kids jumping and kicking trash cans. I said, she said to me that she came and called for help, but y'all haven't sent her none. And so she tried to get smart, and I said, such and such, and she made the mistake to say they was a Title I school. Title I? Say less. Now, my mother used to work for Title I when I was in elementary school, like a long time ago, right? But a Title I school receives federal funding under the Elementary and Secondary Educational Act, right? Providing extra educational support for students who have low-income families. So, since you're a Title I school, I know that you get funding to be able to help this woman down here. She was fresh out of college, right? So she's probably like 22 years old. She is a Caucasian woman in a predominantly African-American classroom, right? With maybe one or two that were Caucasian, and that was it. They're running circles around this woman. And I said, oh, okay. So I go home. I said, by the time I get back here in the morning, y'all better have the answer for me, because my baby's in that classroom, okay? And my child is not learning. So now I got a problem. Go home, call my mom, and I'm like, this Title I school. I think I said Title IX, but it's actually Title I. A Title I school, and can you tell me, what needs to be done? And so she says, cool. So she gives me a whole layout of what we can do, of what I go in there and know what I'm talking about and tell them what they have to do because I know what that funding's for. So I go in there and she still was trying to beat around the bush until I said, well, my mother actually worked for Title One. And because she worked for Title One, I know you have to do this, and I know you have funds laid aside for this and that and this and this and blah, blah, blah. And so she was like, okay, well, you're right. Well, we'll have to get her some extra help, which they did, right? So I go home and I'm praying about the situation. And this was actually the night, that night that everything went down. And the Lord said to me when I was talking to him, I said, Lord, you need to send somebody to help that woman, okay? Because she needs help, okay? You need to send somebody to help her. And he said, I did. I said, oh, that's wonderful. I said, who was that? He said, you. I know you lying. Lord, I better like three. They get on my nerves. You want to send me to a classroom full of kids? I said, Lord, and he said to me in plain voice, Chanel, you're the answer to this problem. He said, you went in there in 5 minutes, you brought order, and this woman can bring order in 4 months. So I wrestled with the Lord that whole night. Lord, I'm not going up there to that school. Yes, I had a daycare when I was younger, okay? I don't want this. I got up that morning to get my son ready for school. The Lord is still talking to me. Yep, you still don't want you to go up there. And guess what I did? When I went up there for that meeting, she said, well, if you would like, you could sit in there with him. I said, why would you do? Lord, you be doing too much. Guess what? I was the answer. Because I was able to go into that classroom and see why those kids were acting that way. When I got in that classroom, we're talking about kids in the 3rd grade. I think it was 3rd grade. They were acting up. The majority of them that was doing the real bad stuff, they couldn't read, and some of them could not read or write. And they created what you call pretty much a garbage can classroom. You take high-functioning kids that have no problems, no issues, and you put them in a room, and then you pull out all the bad kids and shove them in there. And this new young teacher is supposed to, because it was like February or March. I think it was February when they were making this change. As I remember getting the letter, but they made it so pretty that you wouldn't have caught it, right? And so, the Lord used me to be able to go into that classroom and to bring order and to find out, that we had kids that couldn't read and couldn't write, and they were acting out because of it. We had a little girl that was, raised her hand, and she was good in class participation. But when it was time for her to have to look at some paper, she kicking chairs, she throwing chairs, she yelling and screaming. And because of that, I was able to bring a structure. And I'm like, first of all, y'all made a mistake. If these kids were doing good reading over here, why would you take them out of that classroom? So putting back where, so during reading time, they're able to be where they were able to learn. Okay. If they can deal with her reading style, they need to go back there. So we ended up setting almost like a junior high type function. And from this point to this point, they're over there with this teacher. And then when it's time for math, because they're better over here, then they would go be with this teacher during the time of math. And, they actually offered me a job that next year to come in and to do the same thing, to help teachers be able to deal with classrooms that were really big or that were a little rowdy. To come in and to be able to help them bring order to their classrooms. And I did it for a while, but then I had some health challenges happen with my legs and stuff, and so I had to stop doing it. But I would go volunteer from time to time to help them if they needed it. And that's when I realized that I was the answer, and that there's a problem in this world that all of us will have to at some point solve. And God wants you to know that. That thing that you like, Lord, I know you don't want me to do that. I know you ain't asking me. Yeah, he is. Because you're the answer to that problem. And you'll know that it's a God-sized problem because you'll be thrust right in the middle of it. And he'll be like, you're the only one that can do this. Get your chin up and get to work. So I want you guys to get this book. It'll be available again on this Friday. And it's time for you to figure out what you were called to do.